right, everybody. Welcome to Pod Hour. Marcus Banks, 5x5, side by side. Like to say that this one's going to be a little different as we are taking a shift and actually focusing on how things are going to be looking from this point forward, because this is actually going to be in the format of the podcast, the YouTube streams, and everything that I'm bringing to the listeners and viewers for this platform, this 5x5 side by side. Faith, family, friends, fitness, finance, purpose, planning, patience, persistent perseverance program, right? And today, I want to really start by introducing Dig Deep. And Dig Deep is the book that I started authoring several years ago, and over the process of putting that together, it was something very dynamic in the works, and it ended up being or growing into something even more dynamic, and just through all of the research that I did in putting it together, I'm really excited to get it out to everybody. And the final edit actually arrived today, and so that's why I wanted to go with that and start diving into it today. And so the process of my own digging deep, if you will, is explained in the book, but a lot of it really had to do with my experiences of divorce, fatherhood, trial and error, so to speak. One big change in my life was experiencing the loss of my brother to suicide. And that loss really shifted how I had to approach my own stumbling blocks and stepping stones. And being 40 now, when that took place at 24, I didn't know which way was up. I really had to rely upon my faith at the time. And at the time, I was really still exploring my faith journey. And that's why within this 5x5 side by side research but experience type of walk and journey that I've gone through, I really work to support others through their journey and their walk as well. Because when it really comes down to it, we're all just trying to learn how to live in the short amount of the lifespan that we're allocated, right? But what we also have to understand is that we are a smaller portion of the collective, and a portion of that collective has to do with our generations, but also our mental consciousness. And though we like to think of ourselves as being so separate, we're in fact not separate at all. And once we understand how we really correspond to both of those, then we start to really see how significant we are in this greater whole. And so through my journeys and being throughout the world, my ups and downs and things of that sort, and the research and my master's levels and doctorals and all this other stuff, and then just daily walk, and the many people that I came across within it, it became so important for me to be able to speak to our experiences beyond just simply what we see, what we taste, smell, and so forth. So I decided to write this book after figuring some of that stuff out along the way. A portion in the book, what I wrote was, or is, right, because it's coming out, we all have come from different religious and spiritual traditions. We have been taught to worship different images, likenesses, ideals, perspectives, dogmas, etc. The student and disciple in us searches from book to book, teacher to teacher, school to school, lesson to lesson, never realizing that it's neither book, teacher, nor institution, nor manner of instruction, but experience by which self-awareness is revealed. There is nowhere we can go in which the Creator is not with us, presently, and unfortunately, what we're not told at the beginning of such a journey is that the process of awakening is long and difficult. So I'm going to pause it there, because this awakening process is long and it's difficult, and many of us as children in this difficult process aren't aware of who we have, right? Our parental figures, our siblings, our grandparents and whatnot, and our other kinfolk, because they're experiencing these struggles as well. And unfortunately, they weren't given the proper tools. They're going with the best that they have. And unfortunately, these traumas and dramas, and that's one of the chapters in my book, continue in their journey. And then they cascade on to their loved ones, unfortunately, or they can't get through the reprogramming process, if you will, of supporting themselves through the best way to describe it is a healthy way of improving their traumatic responses, those negative feedback loops, or into more positive feedback loops, right? Those coping skills which we learn, whether they be positive or negative, we still find ways to cope. If we are coping with childhood trauma, right? And that childhood trauma came in the form of verbal abuse or physical abuse or anything like that. So again, what's most important is being able to work through these experiences that have become embedded in our psyche, become embedded in our physical responses, in our physical health, and help those around us get through their experiences as well. So that's one of the reasons why I wrote the book. Now that is the fitness portion of it, right? Now the faith portion of it is, how do we find the confidence, the faith, the the will, the purpose, the ability to move forward? Where do we tap into within this greater power, right? I continue here. We quest for a process that cannot be sped up nor slowed down by any other means than what our life allows, be we young or old soul. You are where you're supposed to be, which is why acceptance of yourself, personality, identity, and path to accomplish purposeful attainment or success is so crucial. We must let go of our dispositions and allow ourselves to see beyond our inhibitions of the past. We are not who we believed ourselves to be, but rather who we want ourselves to be. You, however, can only get there through growth, interactions, learning, application, and experience. As a newborn child can only become a year old in a year's time, you must allow the process to unfold. See ourselves as a part of the greater whole, and as you look within and across, you will see how humanity is all structured comparatively. So, as we observe ourselves, there's this process where if we stay trapped in these very limited perceptions, then we continue to remain stuck. We continue to remain isolated, and we continue to believe that we are separate in our experiences. We remain separate in our connection to these different socioeconomic systems, our ability to gain access to resources, even if those resources seem outside of our reach. The greatest resource that anyone can attain or attempt to have access to is a mental resource, or the ability to think beyond their issues, beyond their present circumstances, and the emotional responses that keep us stuck, if you will, or perpetually in a cycle of certain behaviors. Now, this is not to say that, and this is coming from a psychological perspective, that's or neuroscience perspective. That's not to say that we all have the ability to put our thoughts together in the same way, because we don't. Someone being born with autism, or someone being born with some type of neurological defect, obviously is going to be at a disadvantage. So they have a bit longer to have in putting their mental processes together. However, what we have in the Western world is an advantage, right? But we lose that advantage because we're focused on the wrong things at times. And we continue to lose that advantage when our focus is upon fear-based ideas, concepts, perceptions, and things of that sort. If we could focus on these areas, again, faith, family, friends, fitness, and finance, and within that particular order, if you will, and balance that across our lives, then we will be able to improve ourselves across our life spectrum. Now, with regards to faith, there was this one post that I have that has garnered a lot of attention I think it has over 20,000 views, and it's a short. The short is it's on the podcast now, and it's the knowledge of good and evil, the tree of life. And within the book, I state, find yourself, for the tree of life is within. Holistically balancing your endocrine system, thereby, or their corresponding energy centers or chakras, hormone production, your emotional responses to life circumstances, and planning for your success, while teaching others to do the same, are the greatest contributions anyone can make to humanity. This is what has been at the heart of every religion and spiritual and even medical tradition since the dawn of humanity's mental ability. Identifying and controlling an animalistic nature within a divinely interconnected being, one who too often feels detached and disengaged from an ever-continuous source, to the point that definition outside of ourselves through persons, places, and things is sought, because we are taught to believe that the vastness of the universe is so unimaginable and awareness would equally be unknown, should not be the greatest secret never told. So with all of that, what's been excluded from a lot of reiterated religious tradition is the idea that we have this always, ever, and present connection to a divine source, a divine connection. And this connection, this source, this ability only escapes us when we, number one, lack the awareness, when we remove our mental ability, or we refuse to engage it. That is the power of the mind. When we believe that there is no connection, then we are refusing ourselves to engage a connection, in the same way that if we do not engage the gas pedal to the vehicle, or we don't we have the inertia but we choose not to use the energy. Say for instance, I like to compare human beings to, say for instance, hey Desi, I like to compare human beings to the programming power of computers, because that's what we were modeled, or excuse me, that's what computers were modeled after. It's a microcosm. It's a reverse engineering aspect. If you ever really look at how products are designed, computers are designed to connect to one another in the same way that human beings are designed to connect to one another. And so we do this in various ways. We do this through means, physical means, through ocular means, through verbal means, through sound waves, and then they found a way to do it through what they call the ether, right? Which is why when the internet was created, they called the connection the Ethernet. And so that was this this thought wave process, which they could only introduce it through fiber optics or light waves. And where they're going with this is the ability to communicate through, again, thought waves, which is the mind, which is this ever-present communication process or consciousness. So again, that's called entanglement theory, which I also write about within the book, but it's more brought down a little bit. The point is that we are always connected to this universal mind, this mental consciousness, this mind of Christ, but it has been called other things, other ideas, other concepts across different spiritual traditions. But we always want to get locked into a singular type of idea and fight about it and impress upon it in the ways that different religious traditions, or should I say fighting systems, try to prove that one is superior to the other. Well, the reality behind it is it's not necessary to prove that one is superior to the other if we're all communicating in the same or towards the same source for the same reason. If it is such that we are made up of the same elements of the earth, right? Because we are all interacting and we need the same nutrients and things of that sort. The reality is that surely what we are being exposed to is a belief that we are separate than one, or separate from one another. Somewhere along the line, a hatred was introduced. For what reasons I go into, but that's in a previous one. The one that I did yesterday, where I'm talking about this past 50,000 year epic. I dove into that one, but that's not what we're here to do today. Really want to clear the mind to understand that with respect to our own faith, what's most important is having faith in yourself and overcoming these difficult realities and the acceptance thereof, right? We get locked into these circumstances. Even poverty is a circumstance. We get locked into believing that stagnation is a way of life. I'm going to say it again. We get locked into believing that stagnation is a way of life. And many people give up because they believe that being stuck is their only option. And being stuck is not the option, it is the lack of decision-making ability. There's always an option. When anyone feels as though they are out of options, it's because they are unwilling to make a choice with the options that are available. So that's the difference between wanting to lead one's life and wanting to live one's life. So again, as I had introduced, that the very difficult time in my life was when my brother had completed suicide, and that was a grief and a trauma and a very difficult part of my life's experience that I had to overcome and work through. And that portion of his journey, he exercised an option. And a lot of people believe that that is an option, whereas I say that is never an option. That persistent perseverance is the way to move through, around, over, right, our difficulties. And it is when we aren't clear in our thinking that we get stuck into believing that we are out of options. So the reason why I wrote Dig Deep was because I felt it was important for us all to recognize that we don't have to get stuck in our mental processes, that a belief of something does not mean that there is a lack of fact, truth, and the inability to work outside of that belief, right? So you'd be amazed of how much you'd be able to explore if you just get out of your own box, your mental box, and free your thinking process and nurture your own fitness, nurture your relationships that you have with yourself, and like I said, your faith, family, friends, fitness, and finance. And at any point where you feel as though you are without support, then in those areas something is lacking. At any point where you feel as though you are without purpose. What's up there? I want to say Shinobi, Shango Beme. At any point that you feel that you are without purpose, understand that purpose is akin to potential, right? It's something that you are constantly working towards. As long as your heart is beating and your lungs are breathing, right? You have purpose. Okay? The human body is a magnificent thing, but it's only a magnificent thing as long as the brain is functioning. The reason why any person passes away is not because they lose too much blood. It's because the blood doesn't reach the brain. The brain is the center. Okay? Everything happens here. Everything that takes place within the body's functioning is to support this. Do you understand? So, with that being said, we have to realize that when it comes down to your development, the reason why it takes so long in order for us to become adults is because this takes so long to develop. So when we are talking about child proteges and talking about, this child that, went to Harvard at the age of 12. And I mean, that's beautiful and stuff like that. But there's still some growth that needs to happen. All right. We're not done developing or growing up until somewhere around the age of 25 or 26. And that's brain development. Yeah. Body wise, we might appear to be mature. Right. But neurologically, there's still some misfires up there. There's still some impulsivity that needs to be brought down. There's still some lack of awareness and decision making. We don't know what we want to be when we grow up. So this whole idea that you're supposed to know what you want to do, you're supposed to be seated in your career. You're supposed you're at the end of your prime, and whatever the case may be, all these tales and these myths, it is simply not true. We're not supposed to be kicking our children out of the house at 18, 19, 20, 21 years old. They're not ready. I mean, hell, I work I don't say work with, I work for individuals who have been homeless for years. And I'm talking about they are 50 and 60 years old and they're still trying to figure their lives out. So this idea that the reality is that we're not patient enough with ourselves, let alone patient enough with our loved ones who have had these experiences that have been very troubling, to say the least, and traumatic, to say the most. And then we turn our backs on them as if we don't understand ourselves enough, and would ask others not to turn their backs on us. So, in that, our humanity is at risk. Compassion and empathy is what we would risk so that we can get ahead and look down upon the next person and say what? I told you so? Better me than them? In what area of our lives does that support any type of spiritual or humanistic growth? And then we want to hold particular titles, which are arbitrary and meaningless, with respect to, should I say, as we try or attempt to tell someone that we are advanced in our thinking or in our way of life or whatnot. What we're really saying is that the ego, our identity, our personality, who we believe ourselves to be, is more important than the individuals that we proclaim that we care for. What we need to do is reverse that, because who we care for, if we extend that hand, if we have a sense of compassion, and if we really care for them and we care for others, that really means that we understand our own personal needs and we understand the empathy and the compassion that we needed in our most, should I say, needful times, in our most trying times, in the time where we ran out of gas, where we were without a caring word, when we were feeling alone or isolated, or we were at the breaking point in our lives and felt like we didn't have anyone to call or no one was calling us. So at those points is when our true identity really reveals itself. And we're able to set our personality, our ego, and the idea of the myness and I-ness aside and say, I see the hurt and the pain within the world, and there's something that I'm willing to do about it. When we think in that direction, then we understand what's happening out there and the fear that's really being projected. I'm not excusing people's behavior, but I am describing what's propelling it. It's a lot of fear. It's a lot of trauma. It's a lot of anger because of those two things. And it's a lot of unresolved and unfinished business that is not allowing for people to walk or remain in a space of peace, believe it or not. And a lot of it stems from our family of origin issues, which we choose to abandon or avoid. Which is why faith, family, friends is very important there. So if we're going to abandon our family issues, we're abandoning a portion of ourselves. We're abandoning our mothers. We're abandoning our fathers because we felt abandoned at one point in time. Abandoning our brothers or our sisters or our children, in the sense that because someone abandoned us, we don't see the issue in abandoning others. So we have to ask ourselves, where does the buck stop? When do we make the decision to nurture the child within, provide comfort, even though there may not be someone who has said sorry to us or apologized or provided some sense of restitution? We're still an adult who can take responsibility for that child within and embrace and love, right? And seek some sense of counseling support, spiritual support, right? That's the fitness part. And then, in that process, continue to heal and offer that healing support to someone else. I always say, in a world of 7 billion people, who's truly alone? Or is that just another belief that we want to harbor and dwell in for the sake of keeping a wound open? So when we dig deeper, right, because that's the name of the book, as we dig deeper into ourselves, we begin to understand these other aspects of the world and why it functions the way it does. And that's called, again, correspondence. You don't have to travel to the farthest reaches of space in order to understand the space within. As there's a sun out there, there's a sun inside as well. And all of these allegories and these different parables begin to make more sense as you read them. But you're not supposed to walk this walk by yourself either. Otherwise, you just get so confused and lost in everything else. So, nobody told me to, go and do this stuff, because I recognize and realize that in the same way that I needed someone to walk me through it, for those who are willing, come on and walk with me. So, I'm Marcus Banks, here to let you know that through faith, family, friends, fitness, and finance, you can find your purpose, create your plan, adapt to some sense of patience. And with all of that, I encourage you to have persistent perseverance. So I'll make sure that I save this and put it on my podcast. And I'm sending peace, love, and honest to all of you.